Jiwan Park stood in the center of the Great Hall on Nexus Prime Station. The enormous space station floated in the void between galaxies, serving as the home of the Galactic Council. Around her, hundreds of alien beings sat in their special seats, each designed for their different body types. The air smelled strange, filled with the mix of different atmospheres that each species needed to breathe. For 23 years, Jiwan had served as Earth's ambassador to this council. She had watched humans be treated like children while alien species made decisions about humanity's future. Today was different. Today, everything would change. The Vexari representative, a tall crystal being that sparkled under the stations. Lights was speaking. Its voice sounded like breaking glass when it talked. "The motion is clear," it said. "Humans will be limited to 3 star systems. No more expansion beyond their current borders." Jiwan felt her hands shake with anger. 3 systems. 3 tiny dots in a galaxy full of millions of stars. The reasoning was always the same. Humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable, too dangerous to be allowed to grow. Furthermore, continued the Quillen delegate, its tentacles waving in the air, all human military vessels must be registered with Council oversight. Any ship larger than a patrol craft requires our permission to build. The insectoid Zephyrite clicked its mandibles in agreement. These restrictions will help humanity learn to be civilized. In perhaps 100 years, we might consider loosening these rules. 100 years. To aliens who lived for thousands of years, this seemed reasonable. To humans who lived barely a century, it was a death sentence for their species' growth. Jiwan had heard enough. She walked to the center speaking platform, her footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. The aliens looked down at her with expressions she had learned to recognize. Amusement, condescension, pity for the poor little human who thought she had something important to say. "Distinguished members of the Galactic Council," Jiwan began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's speakers. "For over 2 decades, humanity has tried to work with this body. We have followed your rules. We have accepted your limitations. We have proven ourselves time and again." The Vexari made a sound like wind chimes. "Ambassador Park, the vote has concluded. Your species will adapt to these new guidelines as you have before." "No," Jiwan said simply. The word hung in the air, like a challenge. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several aliens made sounds that might have been laughter. The concept of a junior species refusing council decisions was apparently amusing to them. "I'm sorry?" the Quillen delegate asked, its tentacles curling in what Jiwan recognized as confusion. "I said no," Jiwan repeated louder this time. "Humanity rejects these restrictions. We reject this council's authority over our species. As of this moment, Earth formally withdraws from all agreements with the Galactic Council." The chamber erupted in noise. Clicks, whistles, harmonic tones, and electronic bleeps filled the air as hundreds of species tried to process what they had just heard. The Vexari representative stood, its crystal body flashing with angry red light. "You cannot simply leave the council," it said. "Your species signed binding agreements. You have obligations." Jiwan smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Those agreements were signed under the promise of equal treatment and mutual respect. Since this council has never shown humanity either, we consider those contracts void. On her wrist communicator, she could see Captain Minho Kim's face, watching from his ship in Earth's solar system. His expression was grim but determined. Behind him, she could see other human officers preparing for what would come next. The Zephyrite delegate buzzed angrily. Your species is making a grave mistake. Without council protection, humanity will not survive. You lack the technology, the resources, the knowledge to exist independently in this galaxy. Do we? Jiwan asked. She pulled out a small device from her pocket and activated it. A hologram appeared above her head, showing data that made several aliens gasp. The hologram displayed Earth's true technological capabilities. For decades, humans had hidden their real achievements, showing the Council only what they expected to see: advanced faster-than-light engines, quantum computers that operated beyond known physics, energy systems that could power entire star systems. While you treated us like children, Jiwan continued, we learned. We grew. We prepared. Humanity doesn't need the Council's protection anymore. We never did. The Quillen delegate's tentacles writhed in what Jiwan knew was distress. This is impossible. Our sensors would have detected such developments. Your sensors detect what we allow them to detect, Jiwan replied. For 20 years, every human in Council space has been gathering information, learning your weaknesses, understanding your limitations. Did you really think we would remain helpless forever? The great chamber fell silent. The weight of Jiwan's words settled over the assembled aliens like a heavy blanket. For the first time in Council history, a species was not begging to join them or pleading to remain. A species was walking away by choice. The Vexari's crystal body had turned from red to deep purple, a color Jiwan had learned meant serious concern. Even if what you claim is true, your species cannot survive alone. The galaxy is dangerous. There are threats you cannot imagine. Then we'll face those threats as we've faced every other challenge in human history, Jiwan said. Together as one species, relying on ourselves. She began walking toward the exit, her footsteps the only sound in the massive chamber. As she reached the doorway, she turned back one final time. Members of the Galactic Council, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the hall. Humanity thanks you for the lessons you've taught us. You showed us that strength respects only strength. You demonstrated that in this galaxy, species must earn their place through capability, not birthright. You proved that those who underestimate humanity do so at their own peril. The Zephyrite delegate clicked frantically. You cannot leave. Your species will return within months, begging for readmission. You will see that you need us. Jiwan's smile returned, and this time it was genuinely amused. Perhaps. Or perhaps you'll discover that you needed us more than we ever needed you. She walked through the doorway and didn't look back. Behind her, the council chamber erupted in chaos. Delegates argued, accused each other, and demanded explanations. How had they missed humanity's true development? How had the humans hidden so much from their oversight? What did this mean for the galaxy's stability? In his ship orbiting Earth, Captain Minho Kim closed the communication channel and turned to his crew. Signal all human vessels, he ordered. Operation Homecoming begins now. Every human citizen in Council space has 72 hours to reach designated pickup points. On Nexus Prime Station, Jiwan boarded her personal transport without speaking to any of the alien reporters who shouted questions at her. As her ship pulled away from the massive station, she looked out the viewport at the structure that had dominated human politics for so long. Goodbye, she whispered to herself. We won't be back. The transport jumped to faster-than-light speed, carrying her toward Earth and toward humanity's uncertain but independent future. Behind her, the Galactic Council continued its emergency session, trying to understand what had just happened and what it might mean. None of them suspected that humanity's departure was not the end of something, but the beginning of everything. President Hyejin Lee stood at the podium in the United Earth Government Assembly Hall in Geneva. The massive room was packed with representatives from every nation on Earth. Cameras recorded everything, broadcasting to billions of humans across the planet and throughout the solar system. "Citizens of Earth," she began, her voice steady and strong. "Today marks the beginning of humanity's true independence. We have severed all ties with the Galactic Council." The assembly erupted in applause. For decades, humans had watched their representatives be humiliated and dismissed by alien species who considered them inferior. The news of Ambassador Jiwan Park's dramatic exit from the council chambers had spread quickly through human space. "Some will say this decision is dangerous," President Lee continued. "They will claim we cannot survive without alien protection and guidance. They are wrong. Humanity has never needed anyone's permission to thrive." In the back of the assembly hall, Admiral Seok-jin Choi watched with satisfaction. For months, he had been preparing for this moment. Operation Homecoming was already in motion. Every human citizen in council space, scientists, traders, engineers, diplomats, was being evacuated to predetermined locations. "The process will take time," Admiral Choi had explained to the president earlier. "We have over 2 million humans scattered across 47 star systems, but our people know what to do. They've been preparing for this day." Dr. Yuna Oh sat in her laboratory deep beneath Seoul, monitoring reports from across human space. As head of the Advanced Research Division, she had spent the last 15 years developing technologies that the Council had forbidden humans to pursue. Now, those projects could finally be revealed. "Madam President," Dr. Oh had said in their morning briefing, "Project Prometheus is ready for implementation. Our new energy systems are far beyond anything the Council species possess." The evacuation was proceeding smoothly across the galaxy. On the trading world of Keth Prime, human merchant Jinwoo Nam was loading the last of his cargo onto transport ships. Alien customers watched in confusion as every human business suddenly closed. "Where are you going?" asked his Quillen business partner, tentacles writhing with concern. "We have contracts, obligations," Jinwoo smiled politely. "All contracts with non-human entities have been terminated. You'll need to find new suppliers." The Quillen made a sound like angry water. "This is madness. Human goods are essential to our economy. You cannot simply disappear." "Watch us," Jinwoo replied, walking up the ramp into his ship. Similar scenes played out across the galaxy. On research stations, human scientists gathered their personal belongings and left behind projects they had worked on for years. They took nothing that belonged to the Council species, but they also left nothing of value behind. Dr. Sunwoo Kim had been working on Vexari Prime for 8 years, studying crystal growth patterns. As she packed her equipment, her Vexari colleagues watched in disbelief. "Your research is not complete," one of them chimed, its crystal body flashing confused colors. "The project will fail without human insight." "Then you'll have to develop that insight yourselves," Dr. Kim replied. "Humans won't be solving your problems anymore. The Vexari's crystals turn dark blue. But humans are so good at finding solutions. Your minds work differently than ours. We need that perspective." Dr. Kim paused at the laboratory door. "You should have thought of that before treating us like children for 23 years. Back on Earth, the evacuation reports were encouraging. Admiral Choi's teams had planned for years, establishing secret communication networks and hidden supply depots throughout human space. Every human citizen knew their role in Operation Homecoming. Current status? President Lee asked during the emergency cabinet meeting. 78% of our people have reached extraction points, Admiral Choi reported. The remaining 22% will be collected within 48 hours. No casualties so far. What about the Council's response? Asked Foreign Minister Daeun Park. Confusion, mostly, replied Intelligence Director Minji Song. They're receiving reports from across their territory about humans disappearing. Some species are starting to panic about economic disruptions. Dr. Yuna Oh activated a holographic display showing human space. Phase 1 of our independence plan is proceeding perfectly. All human colonies are implementing communication blackouts. To outside observers, it will appear as if we've simply vanished. The display showed dozens of star systems going dark, one by one. Each human colony was activating advanced stealth technologies that had been secretly installed over the past decade. Sensor arrays that could fool any Council detection system. Communication scramblers that made human signals invisible. Energy shields that hid entire planets from view. On the mining world of Kepler Station, engineer Sunho Park was overseeing the final phase of the stealth installation. His team had spent months disguising the new technology as routine maintenance. Upgrades. Stealth field is active, reported his assistant, technician Youngjae Lee. The station is now invisible to all Council sensor types. Through the station's viewports, they could see a Council patrol ship passing nearby. Its sensors swept the area where Kepler Station hung in space, but detected nothing. To the aliens aboard that ship, the mining station had simply ceased to exist. The Council's first official response came 3 days after humanity's withdrawal. The Vexari representative broadcasted a message to all human territories, transmitted on frequencies the aliens believed humans used for communication. Attention, human colonies. The crystal being's voice chimed across space. The Galactic Council offers forgiveness for your recent actions. Return to Council oversight within 1 standard galactic month, and no penalties will be imposed. The message received no response. In fact, it received no acknowledgement that anyone had even heard it. Human space remained completely silent. On Nexus Prime Station, the Council convened emergency sessions every day. The Quillen delegates' tentacles had turned a sickly yellow color that indicated severe stress. The economic implications are becoming clear, it reported. Human traders handled approximately 37% of interspecies commerce. Their sudden absence is causing supply shortages across 17 sectors. The Zephyrite representative clicked its mandibles nervously. More concerning is the loss of human problem-solving capabilities. 3 separate territorial disputes have erupted since their departure. Humans were often called in to mediate such conflicts. They will return, insisted the Vexari delegate, though its crystal body flickered with uncertain colors. No species can survive in isolation. They lack the resources and knowledge for true independence. But deep in the Council's intelligence archives, a different picture was emerging. Analyst Kelvar of the Nexarian species had been studying human development patterns for years. What he discovered made his 4 hearts beat rapidly with fear. Counselors, he reported in a classified briefing, I believe we have made a grave error. Human technological advancement has been severely underestimated. The evidence was subtle but undeniable. Energy signatures that didn't match known human capabilities. Communication patterns that suggested far more advanced technology than humans were supposed to possess. Trade records that showed impossible efficiency in human operations. They have been hiding their true development level, Kelvar concluded. The question is, how advanced have they actually become? That question would soon be answered in ways the Council could never have imagined. In human space, the evacuation was complete. Every human citizen had been brought home. Every piece of human technology had been retrieved or destroyed. The galaxy's younger species had vanished as completely as if they had never existed. President Lee stood once again before the Earth Assembly, this time addressing not just the planet, but every human in space. Phase 1 is complete, she announced. We are truly independent now. The galaxy will learn what humanity can accomplish when we work together, free from alien interference. The applause that followed could be heard on the moon. 6 months had passed since humanity's dramatic exit from the Galactic Council. Trade Coordinator Jinho Bay sat in his office aboard Haven's Rest, a neutral trading station that floated in the space between Council territory and what used to be human space. Jinho was one of the few humans who had chosen to remain outside Earth's protection. As a neutral trader, he dealt with all species and tried to stay out of politics. But lately, staying neutral was becoming impossible. The numbers don't make sense, he muttered, staring at his computer screens. They showed shipping routes, cargo, manifests, and trade volumes from across the galaxy. What he saw worried him greatly. His assistant, a friendly Nexarian named Billy, hovered nearby on his anti-gravity platform. "What's wrong, Jinho? You've been staring at those reports for hours." "Look at this," Jinho said, pointing to the displays. "Shipping delays have increased by 40%. 3 major trade routes have been abandoned completely. And the supply shortages." He shook his head in disbelief. The problems had started small. A shipment of medical supplies delayed here, a communication relay failing there. But the delays and failures were growing worse every week. What had once been a smooth, efficient galactic economy was starting to break down. "Maybe it's just coincidence," Billy suggested, though his tone showed he didn't believe it. 47. "Shipments went missing this month alone," Jinho replied. "That's not coincidence. That's system failure." On the Vexari homeworld, Counselor Veltar was receiving similar disturbing reports. The crystal being's normally bright surface had dimmed to a worried gray as he reviewed intelligence briefings in his private chambers. "Explain this to me again," he chimed to his aide. "A younger Vexari named Kilhan. The human colonies have gone completely silent," Kilhan replied, his crystals flickering with confusion. "Not just their governments or military, everything. No communication signals, no energy readings, no ship movements. It's as if they simply stopped existing." Veltar's crystals flashed angry red. "That's impossible. 57 human colonies cannot simply disappear. What do our reconnaissance missions report?" Kilhan's light dimmed further. "That's the disturbing part, Counselor. The colonies are still there, but they're empty. Buildings intact, infrastructure functioning, but no signs of life. It's like everyone just vanished." Deep in human space, engineer Sunho Park was putting the finishing touches on humanity's greatest achievement. The cloaking network was now complete. Hundreds of relay stations hidden throughout space, creating an invisible barrier around all human territory. "Network test complete," reported his colleague, Dr. Yunbi Choi. "All human colonies are now completely invisible to Council sensors. As far as the galaxy knows, we've simply disappeared." Sunho smiled with satisfaction. For 15 years, he HFY had worked on this project in secret. The network didn't just hide human colonies, it created false sensor readings, redirected communication signals, and made any ship that approached human space simply forget what they had seen. The psychological effect is working perfectly, Dr. Choi continued. Council reconnaissance ships report finding empty colonies, but their own records show those same colonies were thriving just months ago. It's making them question their own intelligence gathering. Meanwhile, the galaxy's economy continued its slow collapse. On the Quillen homeworld, Economic Minister Relvas was presenting increasingly desperate reports to the Planetary Council. Trade volume has dropped 38%, Relvas announced, his tentacles writhing with stress. Agricultural shipments are delayed by weeks. Industrial production has slowed significantly across 7 sectors. But why? Demanded the Quillen Prime Minister, his large eyes reflecting confusion. What has changed? Relvas displayed a holographic chart showing trade routes throughout the galaxy. Many of the lines that had once been bright green were now flashing red or had disappeared entirely. Human intermediaries handled most interspecies trade negotiations. He explained. They understood how to communicate with different cultures, resolve disputes, and find solutions when problems arose. Without them, many species simply cannot work together effectively. The truth was becoming clear to those willing to see it. Humans hadn't just been participants in galactic civilization. They had been the glue holding it together. Their unique ability to understand and work with different species had made them natural mediators and problem solvers. Captain Yoonji Kim received her orders on a Tuesday. As commander of the Council's most advanced reconnaissance vessel, the Starseeker, she was tasked with investigating the human silence. Proceed to former human territory, her orders read. Determine the current status of human colonies and report back immediately. Captain Kim had worked with humans before. She was Catharan, a species known for their analytical minds and careful attention to detail. Unlike many Council species, she had respected human capabilities and even counted several humans as friends. Set course for New Shanghai Colony, she ordered her crew. That was one of humanity's largest settlements. If we're going to find answers, that's where we'll find them. The journey to New Shanghai took 3 days. When the Starseeker dropped, out of faster-than-light travel, Captain Kim expected to see the familiar sight of a bustling human colony. Instead, she saw nothing. Sensors? She asked her science officer. No energy readings, came the reply. No communication signals, no ship movements. It's like there's nothing there. But the colony buildings? Captain Kim pressed. Still. There, Captain. Fully intact, but completely empty. Captain Kim stared at her view screen in confusion. She could see New Shanghai's familiar structures, the residential towers, the manufacturing plants, the orbital docks. Everything looked normal except for one crucial detail. There were no people. Take us closer, she ordered. I want a full sensor sweep of the entire system. What they found made no sense. The colony's power plants were still running. The atmospheric processors continued working. Even the streetlights were on. But there wasn't a single human anywhere. Captain, her communications officer called out. I'm detecting something strange. There are personal belongings in the residential areas, clothes, furniture, personal items. But everything looks like it was just abandoned. Any signs of struggle, evacuation, emergency? None, Captain. It's like everyone just decided to leave at the same time, but took nothing with them. Captain Kim ordered her crew to investigate 5 more human colonies. The result was the same every time: empty but intact settlements, with no sign of where the humans had gone or why they had left. Back in council space, panic was beginning to set in. The Zephyrite hive mind was buzzing with worried communications as their economic networks continued to fail. Supply chain analysis indicates cascading system failure, the Zephyrite representatives reported to the council. Human logistics expertise was more critical than previously calculated. The problems went beyond simple trade delays. Ancient, territorial disputes between species were flaring up again. Conflicts that humans had helped resolve were returning with new violence. Technical problems that human engineers had routinely solved were now causing major system failures. On Haven's rest station, Jinho Bay was fielding desperate calls from across the galaxy. "Please," begged a Vexari merchant, whose crystal surface flashed with desperate colors. "You must know how to contact human traders. My entire business is failing without their logistic support." "I'm sorry," Jinho replied. "I haven't heard from any human traders in 6 months. They've all gone home." "But where is home?" the Vexari asked. "Our ships cannot find any human worlds. It's like they've vanished from the galaxy." Jinho ended the call and stared out at the stars. As one of the few humans still in neutral space, he was receiving dozens of similar requests every day. Species that had dismissed humanity as primitive were now desperately seeking human help. His computer chimed with an incoming message. The sender identification made him freeze. It was from Admiral Seokjin Choi, broadcast on a frequency that shouldn't exist. "Hello, Jinho," Admiral Choi's voice said. "I hope you're staying safe out there. Just wanted you to know that when you're ready to come home, we'll be waiting." The message ended there, but Jinho noticed something strange. His computer showed no record of receiving any transmission. According to his equipment, the message had never existed. "Impressive," he whispered to himself. If humans could send untraceable messages, what else could they do? The galaxy was about to find out. In hidden human space, President Heejin Lee was reviewing progress reports. Phase 2 of humanity's plan was about to begin. The galaxy had learned what life was like without human cooperation. Now, they would discover what humanity could accomplish when working together. "All systems ready, Madam President," reported Dr. Yuna Oh. "Operation Phantom can begin whenever you give the order." President Lee smiled. The Galactic Council had dismissed humanity as primitive and aggressive. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been about both assessments. Economic analyst Do Yun Nam had spent his entire career studying galactic trade patterns. Now, as he stared at the data streams flowing across his monitors in the Council's financial center on Nexus Prime, he felt a cold fear creeping up his spine. "The numbers are catastrophic," he reported to the Emergency Economic Council meeting. Representatives from 12 major species sat around the holographic conference table, their various forms of anxiety clearly visible. "Define catastrophic," demanded the Zephyrite delegate, its mandibles clicking nervously. Do-hyun activated the main display, showing a 3-dimensional map of the galaxy's economy. Where there had once been steady green flows of trade and commerce, now there were angry red warning indicators and broken connection lines. "Galactic trade volume has decreased by 62%, he began. "Industrial production is down 47%. Agricultural distribution has nearly collapsed in the outer sectors. 3 species have already declared economic emergencies." The Quillen representative's tentacles turned a sickly yellow color. "But how is this possible? The humans were only a small part of our economy." That's what we thought, Do-Yun replied grimly. But the data tells a different story. Humans weren't. Just participants in galactic commerce. They were the central nervous system that made it all work. He changed the display to show communication patterns. Look at this. Before humans withdrew, there were over 14 million interspecies trade negotiations happening daily. Now there are fewer than 2 million, and most of those failed to reach agreement. The truth was becoming undeniable. Humans had possessed a unique talent for understanding different species and finding ways to make them work together. They could negotiate between the logical Vexari and the emotional Quillans. They could translate Zephyrite hive mind decisions into terms that individualistic species could understand. Furthermore, Do-Hyun continued, humans served as neutral, mediators in approximately 84% of trade disputes. Without them, old conflicts are returning. As if to prove his point, an urgent message flashed on the conference room's communication system. The Catharan and Nexarian species had just resumed a border dispute that had been settled 20 years ago with human mediation. Captain Yoonji Kim was beginning her 4th month of investigating empty human colonies. Her ship, the Star Seeker, had visited 17 different human settlements, and the result was always the same: empty but perfectly maintained facilities with no sign of where the inhabitants had gone. "Captain," her science officer reported, "I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from the Proxima colony site." "What kind of readings?" Captain Kim asked, hoping for any clue about humanity's disappearance. "It's hard to explain. The energy signature is clean. More advanced than anything in our databases, but it's very faint, like an echo of something that used to be there." Captain Kim frowned. Her crew had made similar reports at other human sites. Strange energy traces that suggested technology far beyond what humans were supposed to possess. But every time they tried to analyze these signatures more closely, they seemed to fade away. "Take us closer to the colony. I want a full spectrum analysis." As the Starseeker approached the empty human settlement, something strange happened. Captain Kim found herself having trouble remembering why they were there. The colony looked normal. Empty, yes. But that seemed right somehow. "Captain?" her communications officer called out. "We're receiving a message from Council Command. They want to know our status." Captain Kim blinked, feeling confused. "Status? What are we investigating again?" Her crew looked equally puzzled. They all knew they had been sent to investigate something important, but the details seemed strangely unclear. Let's return to base," Captain Kim decided. "I think we've completed our mission here." They never noticed that their ship's sensor logs had been completely wiped clean. Meanwhile, in hidden human space, General Taehyung Seo was overseeing the implementation of Phase 2. Humanity's true military doctrine was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Traditional Council military thinking is based on large fleets and direct confrontation, he explained to his staff officers. They expect battles fought with massive ships and overwhelming firepower. Captain Jihoon Park, one of his tactical specialists, nodded in agreement. But human military history teaches us that mobility and intelligence usually defeat raw strength. "Exactly," General Seo replied. "While Council species were building bigger ships and more powerful weapons, we were developing technologies that make their approach obsolete." The human military had spent decades studying every conflict in Earth's history. They had learned from guerrilla fighters, naval strategists, Air Force tacticians, and special operations forces. The result was a military philosophy based on speed, stealth, and striking where the enemy least expected. Our ships don't need to be the biggest or have the most powerful guns, General Seo continued. They just need to be invisible, fast, and precise. Human military vessels were unlike anything else in the galaxy. Instead of massive battleships, they built small, stealthy craft that could appear anywhere without warning. Instead of fixed, defensive positions, they created mobile command centers that could relocate faster than enemies could track them. But their greatest advantage was psychological. Council species thought in terms of formal battles with clear rules and established tactics. Humans thought in terms of chaos, confusion, and unpredictability. Back on Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was facing its worst crisis in over 1,000 years. Emergency sessions were being held daily as reports of system failures and economic collapse continued to pour in. The Outer Rim territories are requesting immediate assistance, reported the Nexarian delegate. Without human traders to maintain supply lines, several colonies are facing shortages of essential resources. The Vexari representative's crystal body flickered with frustrated colors, and the spiral sector disputes have escalated to armed conflict. 3 species are demanding council intervention. "What about our military forces?" asked the Quillen delegate. "Stretched thin," admitted the council's military coordinator. "We have ships, but we lack the coordination protocols that human officers typically provided. Our joint operations efficiency has dropped by 73%. The uncomfortable truth was becoming clear to everyone. For decades, the Council had relied on human expertise to solve problems, mediate conflicts, and maintain the complex systems that kept galactic civilization running. They had taken this support for granted, assuming it was simply part of the natural order. Now, with humans gone, the cracks in that civilization were becoming chasms. Intelligence Director Minji Song received the reports in her office deep beneath. Seoul, every day brought new evidence of the chaos spreading through Council space. "Economic collapse is accelerating," she reported to President Hyejin Lee during their morning briefing. "Food riots have started on 6 worlds. The Zephyrite collective is fragmenting as individual hives start competing for resources." "What about their attempts to find us?" President Lee asked. "Complete failure," Director Song replied with satisfaction. "Their reconnaissance ships approach our territories, scan empty colonies, and leave convinced they've found nothing. Our psychological dampening fields are working perfectly." The dampening fields were perhaps humanity's most elegant weapon. Any alien who came too close to human space would find their memories becoming fuzzy and their motivation to investigate gradually fading. They would return home convinced they had completed their mission, even though they had learned nothing useful. "They still don't understand what happened," Director Song continued. "Most Council species believe we simply collapsed and scattered. A few suspect we're hiding somewhere, but they can't imagine how we could conceal entire star systems." President Lee smiled. "And our own preparations?" "Ahead of schedule. All human colonies are now operating at maximum efficiency. Our production capabilities have increased 43% since independence. Population morale is at an all-time high." The irony was perfect. While Council space fell apart without human support, human space was thriving like never before. Free from alien restrictions and bureaucracy, human colonies had been able to implement technologies and social systems that maximized their potential. "When do we begin Phase 3? President Lee asked. "Dr. Yuna Oh believes we should wait another month," Director Song replied. "Let the Council's situation deteriorate a bit more. When we reveal ourselves, the psychological impact will be much greater." "Agreed, but monitor the situation carefully." We don't want complete galactic collapse. That would serve no one's interests. As reports continued to flow in from across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity's withdrawal had triggered changes no one had anticipated. Species that had coexisted peacefully for centuries were now in conflict. Trade networks that had operated smoothly for generations were breaking down. Technologies that had been maintained through human expertise were failing. The Galactic Council had thought they were disciplining a junior species that had grown too ambitious. Instead, they had removed the keystone that held their entire civilization together, and somewhere in the darkness between the stars, humanity was preparing to return. Intelligence Director Mira Lim stood in the command center beneath New Geneva, monitoring communications from across the galaxy. 2 years had passed since humanity's withdrawal from the Galactic Council, and the chaos in Council space was reaching critical levels. "Operation Phantom is ready to begin," she reported to the assembled military leadership. "All stealth vessels are in position." Admiral Seokjin Choi studied the tactical displays showing the positions of human ships throughout the galaxy. Unlike the massive battleships favored by Council species, these vessels were small, fast, and completely invisible to conventional sensors. "Remember," Admiral Choi addressed the fleet commanders via secure communication, "this is not an attack. This is a demonstration. We want them to see what we're capable of, not destroy their capacity to respond." Commander Ki-Wan Han sat in the pilot seat of the stealth destroyer Silent Thunder, positioned just outside the sensor range of Vexari Prime. His ship was one of 50 human vessels that would participate in the first phase of Operation Phantom. "All systems ready, Commander," reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Gayung Kim. "Stealth field is operating at maximum efficiency. They can't detect us even at this close range." Ki-Wan nodded, feeling the weight of his mission. For 2 years, the galaxy had assumed humanity had simply vanished or collapsed. Today, they would learn just how wrong that assumption had been. "Begin Phase 1, came Admiral Choi's voice over the communication system. "All ships, execute simultaneous manifestation." Across the galaxy, 50 human vessels suddenly appeared. Not gradually, not with the usual energy buildups that preceded ship arrivals, but instantly. One moment there was empty space. The next moment there were ships that radiated power signatures, unlike anything in Council databases. On Vexari Prime, the capital world's defense command center erupted in chaos as sensors detected a massive vessel appearing directly above their primary city. "Where did it come from?" demanded Defense Coordinator Velnash, his crystal body flashing bright alarm colors. "Unknown," replied his sensor technician. "No energy buildup, no faster-than-light signature. It just appeared." The human destroyer hung motionless above the crystal spires of the Vexari capital, clearly visible to anyone who looked up. Its hull design was unlike anything the Vexari had seen, sleek, angular, and somehow menacing, despite its relatively small size. "Commander," Ki-Wan Han smiled as he watched Vexari defense ships scrambling to respond. Their movements were predictable, following standard Council military doctrine. They surrounded his ship in a classic containment formation, energy weapons charging. "Sir," Lieutenant Kim reported, "they're targeting us with their main batteries." "Orders?" "Activate the demonstration protocol," Ki-Wan replied calmly. The Vexari defense ships opened fire, sending streams of energy weapons toward the human destroyer. The weapons passed harmlessly through the ship's hull as if it wasn't there. "Impossible," breathed Defense Coordinator Velnash, watching the display in disbelief. "Energy weapons cannot pass through solid matter." But the human ship was doing more than just ignoring their attacks. It was scanning, deep, penetrating scans that seemed to examine every system, every building, every defensive installation on the planet below. Similar scenes were playing out across the galaxy. Human ships had appeared above every major council world simultaneously. Quillen tentacles writhed in panic as a human vessel materialized above their ocean cities. Zephyrite hives buzzed with alarm as strange ships examined their collective networks. "They're mapping everything," reported a terrified Nexarian analyst to his superiors. "These ships are conducting detailed scans of our entire infrastructure." The scans revealed capabilities that made Council military experts feel sick with fear. The human ships could see through any camouflage, penetrate any shielding, and analyze systems in ways that suggested technical knowledge far beyond what any species possessed. On the Catharan homeworld, Captain Yoonji Kim watched from her office as a human ship hung above the capital city. She had been one of the few council officers who had respected human capabilities, but even she was shocked by what she was seeing. How advanced did they become during their isolation? She wondered aloud. Her question was answered when her personal communication system activated. The signal was coming from the human ship above the city, transmitted on a frequency that shouldn't exist. "Captain Kim," said a familiar voice. She recognized it as Commander David Park, a human officer she had worked with years ago. "I hope you're well. Please give my regards to your crew." The message ended there, but Captain Kim noticed something that made her blood run cold. Her communication logs showed no record of receiving any transmission. According to her equipment, the conversation had never happened. If humans could send untraceable messages directly to individual officers, what else could they do? The answer came exactly 60 seconds after the ships had appeared. Across the galaxy, every human vessel transmitted the same message simultaneously. It was broadcast on all frequencies, in all languages, impossible to block or ignore. "Citizens of the Galactic Council," came a calm human voice. "This is Admiral Seokjin Choi of the Earth Defense Fleet. You dismissed us as primitive and dangerous. You restricted our growth and treated us as children. You believed we would collapse without your guidance." The message continued as images appeared alongside the words, views of human colonies not seen for 2 years, now clearly thriving and more advanced than ever before. Technologies that made council science look primitive. Cities that dwarfed anything the galaxy had ever seen. While you struggled to maintain the systems we once helped you run, we have grown beyond your comprehension. We have developed technologies you cannot imagine. We have achieved capabilities you did not think possible. On Nexus Prime Station, the Galactic Council was in emergency session. The massive chamber was filled with terrified alien representatives as the human message played on every screen and speaker in the facility. "This is impossible," insisted the Vexari delegate, though his crystal body had turned the pale blue of deep fear. "No species can develop such capabilities in only 2 years." "We have watched you struggle," Admiral Choi's voice continued. "We have observed your conflicts, your failures, your inability to maintain the civilization we helped you build. Some among us argue that you deserve whatever fate awaits you." The Zephyrite collective was buzzing with panic. Their hive mind, normally calm and logical, was fragmenting under the stress of confronting something completely beyond their understanding. However, the message continued, "Humanity believes in second chances. We offer you the opportunity to reconsider your previous decisions, to acknowledge that your treatment of our species was both wrong and foolish." Then came the demonstration that broke the spirit of every Council military force. The 50 human ships, which had been hanging motionless above the galaxy's most important worlds, simply vanished. Not gradually, not with energy buildups, but instantly. Where did they go? Demanded the Quillen defense minister. The answer came immediately. Every human ship reappeared in a different location. Ships that had been above Vexari Prime were now above Quillen ocean cities. Vessels that had been scanning Zephyrite hives were now examining Nexarian research facilities. They had somehow moved instantly across interstellar distances, ignoring every known law of physics and every defensive measure the Council possessed. "This is our gift to you," Admiral Choi's message concluded. "Knowledge of what humanity has become, understanding of what we are capable of, recognition that your assumptions about our species were dangerously incorrect." The human ships began their final demonstration. Each vessel projected a holographic display visible from the planet's surface below. The displays showed detailed maps of every military installation, every government facility, every critical system on each world. "We know where everything is," the message stated simply. "We can go anywhere we choose. We can see anything we wish to examine, and we can do all of this without you having any ability to detect, track, or stop us." The psychological impact was devastating. Every Council species suddenly realized that humans could strike any target at any time, bypass any defense, and disappear without a trace. The supposed primitive species now possessed capabilities that made the galaxy's most advanced civilizations look like children playing with toys. "Consider carefully what this means," Admiral Choi's voice concluded. "Humanity has moved beyond your ability to threaten, restrict, or control. The question now is whether you are wise enough to move beyond your need to try." The human ships vanished one final time, leaving the galaxy in stunned silence. On Earth, President Hyejin Lee watched the reports flooding in from across Council space. Panic, confusion, and desperate attempts to understand what had just happened. "The BAO psychological phase is complete," reported Intelligence Director Mira Lim. "Council military morale has collapsed. Several species are requesting immediate negotiations." "Not yet," President Lee replied. "Let them think about what they've seen. When they're ready to talk, they'll find a way to reach us." The galaxy now knew that humanity had not vanished or collapsed. They had evolved into something that made the old order of galactic civilization obsolete. The only question remaining was what would take its place. The galaxy was falling apart. Diplomatic liaison Boyoung Ryu monitored the chaos from her position aboard the neutral station Haven's Rest, watching as desperate messages flooded in from across Council space. "Please respond," begged a Quillen trade representative, his tentacles writhing with obvious desperation. "Our shipping networks have completely collapsed. We need human expertise to restore basic supply lines." "Urgent assistance required," transmitted a Vexari mining consortium. "Without human mediators, our worker negotiations have devolved into system-wide strikes. Production has ceased entirely." Boyoung had been chosen for this assignment because of her unique position. As a diplomatic specialist who had remained in neutral space, she was one of the few humans the Council could still contact. But her orders from Earth were clear: listen, record, but do not respond. The requests were becoming more desperate by the day. What had started as polite inquiries about resuming trade relations had evolved into panicked pleas for basic assistance. The galaxy's major species were discovering just how dependent they had become on human knowledge and capabilities. Admiral Jamin Kwan stood in the command center of Titan Station, humanity's secret military headquarters hidden in the asteroid belt beyond Pluto. The massive facility had been built during humanity's isolation, using technologies that the Council had never suspected existed. "Status report," he requested from his intelligence staff. "Council military cohesion has dropped to critical levels," reported Colonel Sujin Han. "The Zephyrite Collective is fragmenting. Individual hives are making separate territorial claims for the first time in their species' history. The Vexari. Crystal networks are experiencing cascade failures," added Major Dongmin Park. "Without human technicians to maintain the harmonic resonance systems, their interplanetary communications are becoming unreliable." Admiral Kwan nodded grimly. The situation was developing exactly as human strategists had predicted. When species became dependent on external expertise, removing that expertise caused systemic collapse. "What about their attempts to replicate our technologies?" he asked. "Complete failures," replied Colonel Han with satisfaction. "They're trying to reverse engineer our stealth and instantaneous movement capabilities based on sensor readings. But they're approaching the problems using Council standard physics, which can't explain what they observed." The truth was that humanity had fundamentally changed their understanding of reality during their isolation. While Council species had focused on building bigger and more powerful versions of existing technologies, humans had questioned the basic assumptions underlying those technologies. Dr. Yuna Oh had led the breakthrough research that made humanity's new capabilities possible. Her team had discovered that consciousness itself could influence quantum mechanical interactions on a macro scale. By learning to coordinate human thought patterns across entire fleets, they had achieved effects that seemed to violate physical laws. "Sir," Major Park continued, "we're also receiving reports of Council species attempting to contact the Wanderer clans." Admiral Kwan's expression darkened. The Wanderer clans were nomadic species that the Council had long considered extinct or primitive. In reality, they were some of the galaxy's oldest and most sophisticated civilizations, choosing to remain outside Council space to avoid interference. "Let me guess," Admiral Kwan said. "They want the Wanderers to mediate contact with humanity." "Exactly. But the Wanderers are refusing all Council requests. According to our liaisons, they're quite amused by the current situation." This was another part of humanity's grand strategy that the Council couldn't understand. During their isolation, humans had made contact with dozens of species that existed outside Council authority. These relationships had been built on mutual respect and shared knowledge rather than the hierarchical system the Council preferred. The Wanderer clans, the Deep Void Collective, the Stellar Shamans, all of these ancient civilizations had welcomed humanity as equals. Many had shared technologies and wisdom that made human advancement possible. On Nexus Prime Station, Counselor Prime Zithak was facing the worst crisis in the Council's 1,000-year history. The massive Catharan leader's normally calm demeanor had cracked under the pressure of managing galactic chaos. 17 member species have formally withdrawn from Council oversight, his aide reported. "They're citing our inability to maintain basic galactic stability as justification." "What about the emergency sessions?" Zithak asked. "Poorly attended. The Quillen delegation hasn't appeared in 3 weeks. The Zephyrite representatives keep contradicting each other as their collective fragments further." Zithak stared out at the space around Nexus Prime. Once, This had been the center of galactic civilization, where representatives from hundreds of species came to participate in the grand project of interstellar cooperation. Now, it felt like a tomb. "Sir," his aide continued hesitantly, "we've received another transmission from the human neutral station." "What do they want now?" Zithak asked wearily. "It's not a request, sir. It's an intelligence briefing. This was perhaps the most humiliating aspect of the current crisis. Humans were providing the Council with information about the chaos in their own territory, not because they were asked to, but apparently out of some sense of galactic responsibility. The briefings were detailed, accurate, and invaluable. They warned of impending conflicts, identified critical supply shortages, and provided solutions to technical problems. But they came with no offers of direct assistance and no indication of how the humans were gathering such comprehensive intelligence. "What does this briefing say?" Zithak asked. "The Outer Rim territories are on the verge of complete economic collapse. The spiral sector conflicts are escalating toward military action, and—" The aide paused nervously. "And what? 3 species are considering armed action against human space, sir. They believe a military solution might force humanity to return." Zithak felt a chill run through his massive frame. Any species foolish enough to attack humanity now would face capabilities they couldn't comprehend. The results would be catastrophic for everyone involved. "Compose a message to all Council military forces," he ordered. "Any action against human territory is strictly forbidden. Make it clear that violation of this order will result in immediate expulsion from the Council." Back on Earth, President Heejin Lee was reviewing the final preparations for Phase 4. The galaxy had seen humanity's technological superiority and witnessed the collapse that followed their withdrawal. Now it was time for the revelation that would change everything. "All preparations complete, Madam President," reported Dr. Yuna Oh. "The revelation sites are ready for activation." "And our new allies?" President Lee asked. "The Wanderer clans have agreed to make their presence known," replied Foreign Minister Daeun Park. "The Deep Void Collective will reveal their observer networks. The Stellar Shamans are prepared to demonstrate their true capabilities." This would be the shock that broke the Council's remaining authority. For centuries, they had believed themselves to be the galaxy's dominant civilization. They were about to learn that they were merely one small part of a much larger community of advanced species. "The psychological impact should be overwhelming," Dr. O continued. "When they realize that humanity has been working with civilizations more advanced than theirs, the Council's entire worldview will collapse." President Lee smiled. The Council had treated humanity as children who needed guidance and restrictions. But children grow up, and sometimes they surpass their parents in ways that were never anticipated. "Begin Phase 4, she ordered. Across the galaxy, ancient civilizations began to emerge from hiding. Wanderer clan city ships materialized in supposedly empty space. Deep void observation posts revealed themselves in the heart of Council territory. Stellar Shaman meditation fleets appeared near major trade routes. Each revelation came with the same message: we stand with humanity. The galaxy was about to learn that the real powers in the universe had been watching from the shadows, and they had chosen their side. On Nexus Prime Station, alarms began blaring as sensors detected massive energy signatures appearing throughout. Council space. Counselor Prime Zithak stared at the displays in growing horror as he realized the truth. The Council had never been in control of the galaxy. They had been allowed to think they were in control, while the real powers remained hidden in the dark spaces between stars. And now those powers were revealing themselves in support of the species the Council had dismissed as primitive. The reckoning had begun. Ambassador Su-Yung-An was enjoying her morning coffee in the observation lounge of Haven's Rest Station when the priority communication arrived. The message carried the highest-level Council encryption codes and bore the personal seal of Counselor Prime Zithak himself. She read the message twice, then sat back in her chair with a mixture of amusement and satisfaction. After 3 years of silence, the Galactic Council was finally ready to talk. "Please," the message read, "we request immediate negotiations with human leadership. The Council recognizes that previous policies were misguided. We are prepared to offer full membership with unrestricted rights, complete voting authority, and immediate access to all Council technologies and resources." Su-Yung activated her secure communication link to Earth. "Madam President, I believe you'll want to see this." President Dae-Ho-Yoon read the Council's desperate message in his office overlooking the rebuilt Geneva skyline. Through the windows, he could see the gleaming spires of humanity's new capital city, constructed using technologies that made Council architecture look primitive. "They're offering us everything they denied us before," he observed to his cabinet members. "Full voting rights, unrestricted expansion, technology sharing, everything we originally asked for." 3 years too late," replied Foreign Minister Yoon-Soo Kim. "The galaxy has changed. We've changed. The old system is finished whether they realize it or not." Defense Minister Tae-Jin Park pulled up holographic displays showing the current state of Council space. "Their authority is collapsing. 17 species have withdrawn from Council oversight. Multiple territorial conflicts are escalating. The economic networks are in complete disarray." "And our new allies?" President Yoon asked. "The Wanderer clans, Deep Void Collective, and Stellar Shamans have all confirmed their support for our position," Foreign Minister Kim replied. "They're prepared to reveal themselves fully if negotiations fail." President Yoon considered the situation carefully. Humanity held all the advantages now, but revenge was not the goal. The objective had always been to create a better galactic civilization based on merit rather than prejudice. "Convene the Earth Senate," he ordered. "This decision belongs to all of humanity." The Senate chamber in Geneva had been expanded twice since humanity's independence. Representatives from every human colony, every space station, every research outpost came together to debate the most important decision in their species history. Senator Eugene Lee from the Mars colonies spoke first. "The Council is offering us what we wanted 3 years ago, but we've proven we don't need their permission to thrive. Why should we rejoin a system that treated us as inferiors?" "Because isolation isn't a permanent solution," replied Senator Min-Soo Park from the outer colonies. "Eventually, we'll need to interact with other species. The question is whether we do it through the old Council system or create something new." Strategic advisor Naeon Jung had spent months preparing for this moment. She activated the chamber's main display, showing a comprehensive analysis of the galaxy's current state. "Members of the Senate," she began, "our intelligence indicates that the old Council system cannot survive in its current form. Too many species have lost faith in its leadership. Too many conflicts have emerged without human mediation. The network effects that held galactic civilization together have been broken." The display showed cascade failure models, mathematical predictions of how the Council's collapse would affect every aspect of galactic society. "However," Naeon continued, "this creates an opportunity. We can either watch the galaxy tear itself apart, or we can offer a better alternative." "What kind of alternative?" asked Senator Lee. "A new confederation based on proven capability rather than inherited authority," Neon replied. "Member species would earn their positions through demonstrated competence and contribution to galactic stability." The debate continued for hours. Some senators argued for accepting the Council's offer and working for change from within. Others wanted complete independence from all galactic politics. But gradually, consensus emerged around a third option. "We counteroffer," President Yoon announced to the assembled Senate. Not rejoining the old system, but proposing a completely new one. The terms of humanity's counteroffer were revolutionary. Instead of the hierarchical council structure where senior species made decisions for junior ones, there would be a merit-based confederation where authority was earned through results. Ambassador Soo-Young-an transmitted the proposal to Nexus Prime Station with a sense of historical significance. This document would either reshape galactic civilization or trigger its complete collapse. The United Human Government proposes the establishment of a new galactic confederation, the message began. Membership will be open to all species that demonstrate commitment to peaceful cooperation, technological advancement, and mutual respect. The key principles were radical departures from Council tradition. No species would have permanent authority over others. Leadership positions would rotate based on demonstrated competence. Military actions would require consensus among proven. Peaceful species technology sharing would be mandatory for all members. Territorial disputes would be resolved through neutral arbitration. Furthermore, the proposal continued, humanity offers to share the advanced technologies developed during our isolation with any species that joins the new confederation and proves their commitment to its principles. On Nexus Prime Station, Counselor Prime Zithak read the human proposal with growing amazement and horror. The document was professionally crafted, diplomatically phrased, and utterly devastating to everything the Council represented. "They're not asking to rejoin us," he explained to the Emergency Council session. "They're asking us to abandon everything and start over under their leadership." "Preposterous," declared the Vexari representative, though his crystal body flickered with uncertain colors. "The Council has maintained galactic order for over 1,000 years." "What order?" demanded the Quillan delegate, tentacles writhing with frustration. "Half our member species have withdrawn. Our economy has collapsed. Military conflicts are spreading across 3 sectors." The uncomfortable truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The Council's authority had already collapsed. The only question was whether they would acknowledge this reality or cling to the illusion of power while the galaxy burned around them. "What about our allies among the advanced species?" asked the Zephyrite representative. Zithak's expression darkened. "That's complicated. We've learned that species we considered extinct or primitive have actually been observing us for centuries. Many of them have chosen to support humanity's position. The revelation that ancient civilizations had been watching and judging the Council for generations was perhaps the most humiliating aspect of the current crisis. The supposedly advanced Council species had been performing for an audience they didn't know existed, and apparently they had failed the test. "Sir," an aide interrupted, "we're receiving priority communications from across the galaxy. Multiple species are requesting copies of the human proposal." The speed with which humanity's counteroffer spread through galactic communications networks was itself a demonstration of their capabilities. Within hours, every major species had access to the document, along with detailed analyses of what membership in the new confederation would mean. The responses varied widely. Progressive species that had chafed under council restrictions expressed immediate interest. Conservative species that benefited from the old hierarchy rejected the proposal entirely, but a significant number requested private negotiations to discuss specific terms. On Earth, President Yoon monitored the galactic reaction with satisfaction. "The psychological strategy is working perfectly," he observed to his advisors. "We're not demanding submission or imposing our will. We're offering partnership to those wise enough to accept it." "What about species that refuse?" asked Defense. "Minister Park, they're free to maintain their independence," President Yoon replied. "But they'll discover that the old council system no longer provides the stability and support they're accustomed to." The genius of humanity's approach was that it offered something genuinely better than what existed before. Species joining the Confederation would gain access to advanced technologies, peaceful conflict resolution, and efficient economic networks. Those who refused would be left to manage their problems alone. "When do we expect responses?" Foreign Minister Kim asked. "The Wanderer clans have already indicated their support," President Yoon replied. "Several mid-level council species are requesting preliminary discussions. The senior council species are still in denial, but reality will force their hand eventually." As reports continued flowing in from across the galaxy, it became clear that humanity's patient strategy was succeeding beyond their most optimistic projections. The species that had dismissed them as primitive were now competing for the chance to join humanity's new galactic order. The question was no longer whether the old council would survive. The question was how many species would be wise enough to embrace the future that humanity offered, and how many would cling to a past that no longer existed. In her quarters on Haven's Rest Station, Ambassador Su-Yung-an watched the stars and smiled. 3 years ago, she had been a junior diplomat, representing a species. 5 years had passed since the Galactic Council's final session. Chancellor Wu Jin Lee stood at the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching the steady stream of ships arriving for the quarterly Confederation Assembly. The massive space station hung in orbit around the neutral world of Haven, serving as the capital of the new galactic government. Unlike the imposing hierarchical architecture of old Nexus Prime, New Geneva Station had been designed with equality in mind. Every species had contributed to its construction, creating a structure that reflected the diversity and cooperation of the new Confederation. "Chancellor," his aide announced, "the Vexari delegation has arrived for the Technology Sharing Conference." Wu Jin smiled at the irony. The crystal beings who had once dismissed humanity as primitive were now among the Confederation's most enthusiastic participants. Their mathematical precision made them excellent administrators, and their willingness to learn had earned them positions of responsibility throughout the new government. Director So-Young Kim walked through the Integration Center in the station's cultural quarter, observing the training sessions that had become commonplace throughout the Confederation. Former council species were learning human organizational methods, while humans studied alien approaches to mathematics, engineering, and philosophy. "The Quillen delegation has mastered the consensus-building protocols," reported her assistant, Dr. Hyunwoo Park. "Their natural empathy makes them excellent mediators." So-Young nodded with satisfaction. The integration program had been one of humanity's most successful innovations. Instead of imposing human methods on other species, they had created systems that allowed each civilization to contribute their strengths while learning from others. "What about the Zephyrite Collective?" she asked. "Fascinating development," Dr. Park replied. "They've restructured their hive mind to incorporate individual input. It's actually made their decision-making more efficient, not less. The transformation, of the Zephyrites had been one of the Confederation's greatest successes. The insectoid species had initially struggled with concepts of individual contribution and merit-based authority, but once they understood how personal initiative could strengthen the collective, they had embraced the new system enthusiastically. In the Confederation's economic sector, former trade disputes had been replaced by collaborative development projects. Species that had competed for resources under the old council system now worked together to find solutions that benefited everyone. Admiral Jamin Kwan reviewed the quarterly security reports in his office aboard the Confederation's mobile command center. The new military structure was unlike anything the galaxy had seen before, flexible, responsive, and focused on prevention rather than reaction. Conflict incidents are down 78% from pre-Confederation levels, reported Colonel Sujin Han. Most disputes are being resolved through the mediation protocols before they escalate to military involvement. Any serious threats? Admiral Kwan asked. The Outer Rim Consortium continues to reject Confederation membership, Colonel Han replied. They're experiencing increasing instability, but they refuse assistance. The Outer Rim Consortium was a collection of species that had rejected humanity's offer to join the new galactic order. They insisted on maintaining the old council's hierarchical system, but without the infrastructure and support that had made it function. Let them struggle, Admiral Kwan decided. When they're ready to accept help, we'll be here. This was perhaps the most remarkable aspect of humanity's approach to galactic leadership. They didn't force their system on anyone or punish those who chose different paths. But they also didn't provide the support that species had come to expect from galactic government. The results spoke for themselves. Confederation member species enjoyed unprecedented prosperity, technological advancement, and social stability. Non-member species faced increasing isolation and difficulty managing their internal problems. First Contact Specialist Dongwu Park was preparing for humanity's greatest challenge yet. Long-range sensors had detected a new species approaching from outside the galaxy, and they would make contact within days. What do we know about them? Asked President Yunju Yang, who had succeeded Daeho Yoon 2 years earlier. Preliminary analysis suggests they're technologically advanced but possibly aggressive, Dongwu replied. Their ship configurations indicate military rather than exploration priorities. How do we approach this? President Yang asked. Following Confederation protocols, Dongwu replied with confidence. We meet them as equals, offer cooperation if they're peaceful, and demonstrate our capabilities if they're not. The approaching aliens would encounter something unprecedented in galactic history, a unified civilization that welcomed newcomers while being fully capable of defending itself. The old council would have either submitted to superior force or attempted to impose their authority. The Confederation offered a third option. When the alien vessel finally appeared at the edge of Confederation space, it was met by a diverse fleet representing every member species. The message they received was broadcast in mathematical languages that any advanced civilization could understand. Greetings, the transmission began. We are the Galactic Confederation, a voluntary association of species dedicated to peaceful cooperation and mutual advancement. We welcome you to our galaxy and offer you the opportunity to learn about our civilization. The alien response was initially hostile, demanding submission and tribute in accordance with what they called galactic law. But their attitude changed quickly when Confederation ships demonstrated capabilities that made their own technology look primitive. We withdraw our demands, the alien commander transmitted after watching Confederation vessels phase through solid matter and appear instantly across impossible distances. We request information about your Confederation membership requirements. It was a scene that had been repeated dozens of times over the past 5 years. Species that approached with aggression or condescension quickly learned that the Confederation was not weak, even though it preferred diplomacy to conflict. In the Confederation capital, the memorial to lessons learned stood in the center of the main plaza. The simple monument bore inscriptions in every member species' language, but the message was the same in all of them. Never underestimate the species that conquered their own world first. The memorial served as a reminder of how the galaxy had changed. The old council had been built on assumptions of superiority and inferiority, with advanced species guiding primitive ones. The Confederation was built on the understanding that every civilization had something to contribute, and that true advancement came through cooperation rather than domination. Chancellor Wu Jin Li often visited the memorial during his evening walks through the station. Tonight, he was joined by Ambassador Ji-won Park, who had returned from her assignment mediating a territorial dispute in the Spiral sector. "How did the negotiations go?" he asked. "Successfully," Ji-won replied. "The Catharan and Nexarian species have agreed to joint development of the disputed system. Both sides will benefit, and the resources will be shared equitably. Any resistance to Confederation oversight?" None. In fact, they specifically requested human mediators. Apparently, our reputation for fairness has spread throughout that sector. This was perhaps the most satisfying aspect of the Confederation's success. Humanity had not imposed their leadership through force or manipulation. They had earned it through demonstrated competence and genuine commitment to helping other species prosper. As they walked through the station's corridors, Chancellor Li observed the daily miracle of galactic cooperation. Vexari crystal engineers worked alongside human technicians to improve communication systems. Quillan artists collaborated with Zephyrite architects to design new habitation modules. Former enemies had become trusted partners. "Do you think we've achieved what we set out to do?" Ji-won asked. "We've exceeded it," Chancellor Li replied. 5 years ago, our goal was simply to be treated as equals. Now we've created a system where every species can reach their full potential. The transformation had not been without challenges. Some species had struggled to adapt to merit-based leadership. Others had difficulty accepting that their traditional advantages no longer guaranteed authority, but the overall results were undeniable. The galaxy was more prosperous than ever before. Technological advancement was accelerating as species shared knowledge freely. Conflicts that had persisted for centuries had been resolved through mediation and compromise. Even art and culture were flourishing as different civilizations learned from each other. "What's next for humanity?" Ji-won asked. Chancellor Li smiled as he looked out at the stars. "The same thing that's always been next for humanity. We keep growing, keep learning, keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible." The Confederation was expanding beyond the galaxy's borders, making contact with civilizations in distant star clusters. Each new encounter brought fresh challenges and opportunities, but humanity approached them all with the same principles that had transformed their own galaxy. In the research sectors of New Geneva Station, Dr. Yuna Oh continued her groundbreaking work on consciousness-based physics. Her latest project involved teaching other species the mental coordination techniques that made humanity's